Since Xi Jinping's ascent to power in China at the end of 2012, his governance has been characterized by ineffective centralized authority. During the 3 years of the pandemic, Xi's strict lockdown measures severely impacted the Chinese economy. A year has passed since the abrupt abandonment of the dynamic zero-COVID policy, yet China's economy remains sluggish. The economic data from Shanghai and the Yangtze River Delta region shows a picture of stagnation. 1. Rapid outflow of foreign investment. On November 3rd, China's State Administration of Foreign Exchange reported a reduction of $11.8 billion in foreign direct investment liabilities. For the first time, the outflow of foreign direct investment in China exceeded the inflow, signaling foreign companies withdrawing their investments. 2. Lack of confidence among foreign enterprises. A recent survey by the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai showed that 52% of the 325 member companies surveyed are optimistic about their business prospects in China over the next 5 years. This is the lowest level since the survey began in 1999. Business sentiment continues to deteriorate, with foreign companies reassessing the Chinese market. Notably, financial institutions that have closed offices in Shanghai in recent years include ABN AMRO, Citibank Private Banking, Norway Sovereign Wealth Fund, Morgan Stanley, Canadian Fund, BlackRock, Moody's, and Vanguard. The Shanghai government seems unable to address this trend. 3. Reduced tax revenue. According to the Shanghai Municipal Tax Service, Shanghai generated 1,497,200 million yuan in total tax revenue in the first 3 quarters of this year, a mere 2.84% increase compared to the same period last year, significantly trailing the national average. This underscores Shanghai's economic decline. 4. High office vacancy rates. Data from Colliers International for the 3rd quarter of this year shows that Shanghai's office vacancy rate has risen to 19%, with projections of reaching 21.6% by end of year. Over 20% of office spaces in Shanghai are vacant, akin to a 3rd-tier city. 5. Sluggish real estate market. This year, property prices in Shanghai's prime school districts have plummeted. A recent article highlighting a loss of 3 million yuan in 2 years on a school district property in Shanghai trended online. A visit to the Century Avenue area near Lujiazui revealed a continuous drop in listed prices at various real estate agencies, with actual transaction prices falling below expectations. 6. Decreased recruitment and benefits. Bloomberg reports that 2nd quarter recruitment salaries in Shanghai and Beijing decreased by 9% and 6% respectively compared to last year, marking the most significant decline since 2015. Shanghai Pudong Development Bank, China's 9th largest bank headquartered in Shanghai, announced a 40% salary cut and a shift to lower protection temporary employment contracts for non-regular staff. This led to a strike in the bank in May. 7. Halt in hiring and reduced orders. China's 2 major manufacturing and export hubs, the Yangtze River Delta and the Pearl River Delta, are facing challenges. Reports suggest that after this year's Lantern Festival, more than 90% of export processing enterprises in the Yangtze River Delta stopped hiring. Even for available positions, there are hundreds of applicants. In regions like Jiangsu and Changsha, many companies are no longer hiring day laborers. Business owners have revealed a 90% drop in domestic exporters' orders. 8. Weak consumer spending and store closures. According to the Shanghai Municipal Bureau of Statistics, profits in the wholesale and retail sectors decreased by 10% in the first 3 quarters of this year. Despite struggling with reduced profits, businesses in Shanghai have paid 9.1% more taxes to compensate for revenue shortfalls. This unsustainable situation has become unbearable for Shanghai's businesses. Data from Seville's shows a 12.1% vacancy rate in Shanghai shopping centers in the 3rd quarter, far exceeding the 5.4% rate at the end of 2019. Despite surviving the pandemic, major malls and supermarkets have been closing down. 9. Accelerated emigration of the wealthy and middle class from Shanghai. Mr. Tao, working in asset management in Shanghai, liaises with immigration agencies. He reveals that in April alone, following Shanghai's lockdown, his business matched the entire previous year's volume. Last year's immigration cases tripled compared to previous years, and this year the number has climbed even higher. Contrary to popular belief that only wealthy families consider emigration, Mr. Tao's clients are mostly middle class, particularly intellectuals, who are increasingly contemplating emigration. Against the backdrop of China's faltering economic recovery, Xi Jinping visited Shanghai in late November and early December. On November 28th and 29th, he inspected the Shanghai Futures Exchange and the Shanghai Science and Technology Innovation Exhibition, gaining insights into Shanghai's efforts to enhance its competitiveness as an international financial center, advance the construction of an international science and technology innovation center, and develop affordable rental housing. Chinese state media underscored Xi Jinping's directive for Shanghai to lead the nation in reform and opening up. On the morning of November 30th, Xi presided over a symposium in Shanghai to promote the integrated development of the Yangtze River Delta. This visit marked Xi's sixth inspection tour to Shanghai since he took office. During an inspection in Guangdong in April, Xi emphasized that China's reform and opening up policy would remain unchanged. Before Xi's visit to Shanghai, the Chinese Communist Party's Central Committee again introduced measures to rescue private enterprises. On November 27th, the People's Bank of China and 7 other departments jointly proposed 25 specific measures to support the private economy and increase credit support to promote the development and growth of the private economy. In fact, 3 sets of provisions supporting private enterprises have been issued this year alone, on July 24th, August 2nd, and November 28th. The frequency of these announcements suggests a real need for private enterprises to contribute to economic development. However, there is a contradiction. While private enterprises are encouraged, they are also being restricted and suppressed, as evidenced by the enforcement of anti-monopoly laws against technology and internet giants. Regarding Xi Jinping's recent trip to Shanghai, the outside world views it as a temporary measure in response to the severe economic situation in China, with the so-called unchanging commitment to reform and opening up being merely a stopgap strategy. Xi Jinping's directive for Shanghai to take the lead in the nation's reform and opening up has sparked strong backlash on the social media platform X. For example, independent commentator Cai Kun countered that the current suite of policies is contrary to the spirit of reform and opening up. The increased restrictions on private entrepreneurs has severely damaged the private economy and shaken entrepreneurs' confidence. Additionally, the prominent role of national security in economic and financial matters and the arrest of employees of foreign-funded information companies indicate a regression to old ways. In recent years, Chinese authorities, under the guise of anti-monopoly efforts, have restructured tech and internet giants. During the pandemic, Xi Jinping insisted on China's costly commitment to a zero-COVID policy. Independent commentator Cai Kun believes that Xi's support for reform and opening up is a reaction to circumstances. Cai states, "Last year's zero-COVID policy and lockdowns were extremely strict, and no official, dared to oppose or question them. Opposition or questioning would lead to immediate consequences. However, we saw the blank paper movement eventually put an end to that unquestioned approach." Financial scholar Hastily links Xi Jinping's reform rhetoric to China's economic woes, suggesting that Xi is now leaning towards pragmatism to prevent the economy from a deep recession and to avoid social unrest and severe regression that could threaten the stability of the Chinese Communist Party's rule. This is the primary reason why reform and opening up have been brought back to a strategic position. On November 27th, Xi Jinping chaired a meeting of the Central Political Bureau, but the meeting did not address when the third plenary session of the 20th Central Committee would be held, drawing significant international attention. Experts believe the delay in convening the third plenary session stems from 2 major dilemmas: the inability to find a solution to China's economic problems, as various economic stimulus measures have largely failed, and Xi Jinping's lack of suitable personnel for key appointments. The third plenary session of the Central Committee, typically held every 5 years, is known for defining the development path for the next phase and often brings transformative and pivotal changes. For example, the 1978 third plenary session of the 11th Central Committee marked the start of the reform and opening up policy. However, the reforms planned during the 18th Central Committee's third plenary session in 2013 were not implemented, leading to a steep decline in China's economy and challenges to Xi Jinping's governance. After the cancellation of the zero-COVID policy, which was in place for 3 years, China's economy has stagnated, with previous policies no longer stimulating economic development. The three engines of China's economy, investment, export, and consumption, have almost simultaneously stalled, affecting not only the livelihood of the people, but also reflecting on the governance capabilities of Xi's administration. This is why there is such a significant interest in the current third plenary session. Historically, the third plenary session, focusing on economic issues, is held in October or November, the year after the National Congress. The 20th Chinese Communist National Congress, also called the 20th Party Congress, took place last October, so this third plenary session should have been convened this October or November. However, it has not yet been held, and even the date remains unannounced. With less than a month remaining in 2023, and given the tradition of holding the annual Central Economic Work Conference in early to mid-December, as well as Xi Jinping's reported visit to Vietnam in mid-December, observers generally predict that the third plenary session might not be held this year. Beijing senior journalist Gao Yu suggests that the delay in the third plenary session may be due to Xi Jinping's inability to present a viable economic recovery plan. Gao states, "With China's economy facing a cliff-like decline and foreign enterprises leaving, Xi Jinping doesn't have a solid plan. His recent proposal of the Yangtze River Economic Belt and the Political Bureau meeting is supposedly his economic reform plan, but it's hard to see any substantial policy for reform and development. The session might not happen this year, or it could be delayed until January or February next year. The third plenary session usually introduces major economic reform plans, but with nothing substantial to offer, why hold the session?" Gao Yu also believes that Xi Jinping is the cause of the economic collapse and that he, being in a position of power, is not the one to turn the situation around. The real reform target should be the systemic obstacles. Gao Yu said, "The current situation is particularly bad and calls for someone to turn things around, but there is no one. Xi Jinping himself is only making things worse. He has lost the support of both the party and the people. If change is needed, it has to start with him. Who else is there to change?" Wang Juntao, a political scientist in the United States, notes that key decisions are not made through public meetings, but through infighting within the CCP. However, the ritual of the CCP's plenary sessions is crucial for maintaining public confidence. If the third plenary session is delayed, it could spread instability. Wang Juntao believes the third plenary session of the Chinese Communist Party was supposed to cover up practical issues and put forward a bold and constructive policy program, but now it cannot cover up practical problems. No one believes in Xi Jinping under this situation. If a major autocratic country does not rely on ritual to maintain people's confidence and respect for imperial power, it will be in danger. Carl Mintzner, a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations and a law professor at Fordham University, writes, "The failure to set a date for this crucial internal party meeting indicates that the political system and practices of China's era of reform and opening are being further eroded under Xi Jinping's increasingly personalized rule. Since Xi Jinping's rise to power, he has often broken convention. The last third plenary session, the 19th, was held more than half a year early, between February 26 and 28, 2018, in Beijing. This was just over a month after the 19th Central Committee's second session, which was a surprise to many. The second session discussed constitutional amendments to pave the way for Xi Jinping's third presidential term. The 19th Central Committee's third session was moved up by over half a year to handle matters that were supposed to be dealt with in the second session. Commentator Tang Jingyuan analyzes the delay, stating, "The third plenary session traditionally focuses on economy and reform. Now the CCP's economy faces massive crisis, to the point that Xi Jinping is desperate. Recently, there have been a series of actions indicating urgency on his part. He first went to the United States, showing a soft stance and desperately trying to attract foreign investment. Then he made speeches domestically, visited Shanghai, and expressed support for the private economy. These actions suggest that Xi Jinping is indeed in a state of urgency, as the economic measures and policies they have employed thus far have had little to no effect." Tang Junyuan adds, the economy is in such a poor state that holding the third plenary session right now might give anti-Xi factions within the party a reason for or a window to attack him. Hence, it might be deliberately postponed. The delay of this third plenary session is also thought to be related to the departure of several high-ranking military officials, including former Foreign Minister Qin Gang and former Defense Minister Li Shangfu. So far this year, 4 Central Committee members have been dismissed from their posts. These include Qin Gang, who was removed as State Councillor and Foreign Minister, Li Shangfu, who was relieved from his role as State Councillor and Defense Minister, Li Chao, the former commander of the Rocket Force, and Xu Zhongbo, the political commissar of the Rocket Force. The handling of these 4 Central Committee members has become a focal point of external attention. Li Shangfu, in particular, has been removed for over 3 months with no successor for the role of defense minister yet determined. During the recent meeting between Xi Jinping and Joe Biden, China agreed to resume Sino-US military exchanges. However, the US is still waiting for China to appoint a new defense minister, hindering the progress of these exchanges. Commentator Tang Jingyuan notes that the members of the 20th Central Committee, supposedly elected just about a year ago, are already facing major issues, with at least 4 members removed from their positions, including the defense minister and the foreign minister. According to the CCP's official procedures, the third plenary session is required to address the disposition of these 4 individuals, including the reason for their dismissal. Xi Jinping may not yet have a mature plan for this, which is one of the main reasons for the delay of the third plenary session. The most notable third plenary session in the history of the CCP was the 11th Central Committee's third plenary session, commonly regarded as the starting point of China's reform and opening up. The subsequent reforms transformed China from a state of destitution to the world's second-largest economy. So what exactly is this reform and opening up? Let's see what Bao Tong, the former political secretary of Zhao Ziyang, has to say. What has he experienced? Bao Tong, a real reformist within the CCP, once held positions such as the deputy director of the State Commission for Restructuring the Economy and the director of the Central Committee's Office for Political System Reform. He said, after Mao Zedong's death, the life and death of reform was the life and death of the Chinese people. The real owners of reform were not so much the CCP leaders as the 1 billion plus Chinese who refused to be slaves. Bao Tong highlighted that the first major blow of China's reform was the disintegration of the People's Communes, which was driven not by the party's leadership, but by farmers unwilling to obey it. Initially, it began with a single village where, risking their lives and acting in secret defiance of the CCP, villagers decided to distribute land among households. This movement then swept across the nation and was unstoppable. Bao Tong emphasized that the enormous economic development China has experienced over the past decades is not due to the CCP's reforms, but because the CCP loosened its grips on the people's necks, allowing them to thrive through their own hard work and ingenuity. Therefore, he asserts that the true masters of reform are the billions of Chinese people who refuse to be enslaved by the CCP. He also mentioned that another significant aspect of reform was the resurgence of urban individual and private businesses. Before Mao's death, the CCP had eradicated private enterprise in China, even small businesses like shoe repair and barbershops, which were nationalized. Bao Tong stated that reform isn't about pleasant stories or mystique. It's about groups of Chinese people refusing to be slaves, striving to survive. Farmers rejected the people's communes to survive, and youth saw opportunities elsewhere to grasp a chance at life. Many within China's establishment currently believe that to ensure a developmental environment, strengthening political control is a necessary cost. However, when discussing the direction of China's reforms, Bao Tong believes they have at least degenerated or mutated. He points out that many of today's so-called deepening reforms or perfecting reforms are actually rebinding the hands and feet of the people that have been liberated under the guise of reform.